Welcome to another cozy conversation with a tiny business owner. I'm Lydia Lee, and if you're new here, this channel is really about one thing, the tiny business model, which is the belief that you don't have to scale to succeed and that smaller can actually be more sustainable, more profitable, and honestly, a lot more enjoyable. So today's guest is a little different. Alex McInnes was my client before we sat down for this, which means I already know how he thinks, how he works, what he actually stands for. And I thought, okay, I need to turn the tables around here because Alex has a point of view on marketing that I think a lot of small business owners really need to hear. So he runs a practice called Anderson Alps, and he works with solopreneurs and early stage founders who are kind of like drowning in all the advice about what they're supposed to be doing. And I think his background in journalism makes him really good at finding the real story underneath everything. And he never really touches strategy before he understands the person behind the business first. So we get into why the problem is almost never what you think it is, what it actually takes to build trust with premium clients, and why doing less is usually the move. Okay, let's get into it. You and I share a very similar approach to life and business, which is like what can be simple, what can be intentional and effective, but not just doing all the things for the sake of looking good, right? And like that performative bullshit that we're both pretty allergic to. So first of all, for people who don't know you, like give us your little in your own words, what do you do and who do you help?
Yeah, okay. My name's Alex. I have a business called Andes and Alps, and essentially I help solopreneurs, like early stage startup founders, kind of anyone in their early stage of business, like first kind of 3 years. They've got to have quite a small team. Um, I mean, I'm going to say build marketing funnels, but it sounds super boring, and I tend to not say that. It's more that they have a system that is either broken or they just kind of can't get off the front foot. They're really good builders. They know their industry really, really well, but they've been fed a lot of shit by watching short videos on Facebook and YouTube about what they're supposed to be doing. And they end up getting really caught up in just a big sticky mess and really not kind of drilling down on one or two things that they could do really well and just do that all of the way. I kind of make sure that their positioning is right, that they're choosing the right channels to advertise in if they choose that. If organic is the way that they want to go, then it's making sure that their copy is aligned with who they are. And I go really deep. I have really long conversations with them, and that kind of informs me about who they are as people. And I think really what most solopreneurs want is just kind of someone like right next to them, or like to duplicate themselves, really ideally to be able to do more of these tasks and like feel the same way about their business as they do. And I don't think agencies tend to do that. Or anyone on retainer for that matter tends to do that. And so yeah, my role is to say to them, okay, well, what are you good at? And based on what you're good at, I think these are the channels that you should be in. I think this is the messaging that you should have. And I've got this kind of ethos, instead of like having a big shopping cart full of shit and adding more stuff to it, you empty everything out and only put back what you want in there. It's a bit of a process, and it takes a lot of unpicking, and there's a lot of hesitancy there at the start. But I find that, along that journey, there's a lot of trust built, there's a lot of trial, there's a lot of error, but at the end, there's a friendship made, and there is a happiness because it ends up being marketing that doesn't feel like marketing anymore.
Mm. Yeah, I totally
Yeah,
resonate
it's a
with that because I
long-winded
know.
answer.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I was going to point out was like, when we first started working together, I told you how much when I used to hire, right, digital marketing strategists or whatever, marketing experts to come in and do something in my business. That was one of the things that was lacking for me, right? Is that like time to get to know me as a person, not just like tactics, because I know everything works, something has worked for
Mm-mm.
someone
For sure.
out there,
For sure.
right? But what's
Yeah.
important to me as someone who does care about where I spend my money, my time, and all the things, I need it to represent me in like an authentic way, right? Like I don't want to be like when I look at something out there that someone wrote for me, I'm not cringing
Mm,
and going, "Oh God, I would never have said it that way," or
sure.
that's a lot
Yeah.
more salesy and gross than I would have usually positioned that talk or whatever. And that's one thing I really admire about your approach is because that time spent with your people, like you say, not only builds trust and credibility and all those things that are so necessary when someone invites you to their business, but you actually become a better marketer for them, right? Because you know
Yeah.
the heartbeat of what they do and why they do it, what their origin story is like. And I think through that
Hmm.
process, you also help people remember why they started this goddamn business in the first place and
Mm.
not get like
Yeah, yeah.
trapped into like just making money and being out there, but like coming back to the heart of like, why are you doing this? And why does it
Yeah,
matter
yeah.
to the people you're trying to serve, right? So I kind of want to start actually a little bit before we dive into, because I've got a lot of questions about marketing for you for sure, but I always want to hear
Sure.
about origin stories, right? Like what caused you to now do what you do? But not only
Mm.
that, like what happened to you in your career? Because you've obviously been many different hats. You've been a journalist. You've worked in corporate. You've done marketing in the past, right? That's beside this own business, just your own business that you have right now. How
Hmm.
did like that experience shape how you might do your business differently now?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I feel like I've lived quite a few lives. I kind of, since leaving university, I don't really ever recall why I went to university or how I got the degree. I know that I did, and then I went into journalism. I always just like talking to people. I mean, that's pretty much been a thread throughout my whole life. I think people's stories are just so interesting to me. It doesn't really matter who it is, and that might sound a little bit reductive, but it's true. Like everyone's got a story, everyone's got something interesting that's happened to them, and I think that's kind of what led me into storytelling and being a journalist. And unfortunately for me, after a couple of years, the global financial crisis happened, and a whole bunch of people got laid off in New Zealand, where I'm from. Um, and so 2 years into being like a junior journalist, I was no longer a journalist. And so I just thought, I got a redundancy package or something, and then I just started traveling and I did all kinds of jobs. I delivered flowers in London. I became a barman. I sold bets, the TAB in Australia.
A jack of all trades.
Man, what else did I do? I delivered sound equipment, like all kinds of stuff. But all of these jobs, I climbed telecommunications towers really high. I feel like because it's like danger money. All and I hung out with people that have pretty foul mouths, and don't talk like you know your standard corporate people do, and they certainly wouldn't be invited around my grandma's dinner table, But it really kind of it allowed me to see blue collar workers, people who work in bars, alcoholics, high functioning ones, and various other vagrants in these pubs and bars that I'd go into, and but everyone's story was super interesting, and that kind of drew me back into kind of working in PR and marketing. And my wife and I decided to travel overseas, and I worked for a very famous international school in Thailand that I won't name, but it's pretty popular. Very wealthy children go there, and it was a proper corporate atmosphere. Um, there was a lot of good learnings from it, but the biggest one for me was like this is not for me. It's just so rote, it's just so formulaic. You know, punch that card, do that job. Why, measuring ROI in the strangest ways. Um, and it got boring really fast, and I got bored really fast. And kind of skip ahead a bit. Then the COVID happened, and I managed to get a job at the United Nations for a year. I think I got lucky because usually the talent pool for that's pretty high, but because no one was in country at the time, I managed to get that job for a year and a half, and that was really cool. That was kind of the start of working remotely and um, doing things for good, like for the right reasons. But even there, even in a place like the United Nations, so again, so formulaic, you wouldn't think so, but there's a certain kind of corporate element to working in an NGO like that. Um, you kind of get to talk to people, but only really on a surface level. And there's so much pageantry and, you know, people taking photos of each other in really unrealistic ways. The authenticity just wasn't there. And so I kind of just started getting this thought, mate, that I could probably go out there and do this myself, you know. I could start connecting firstly with NGOs myself, and I did, and I worked on a freelance basis. And then I started kind of veering off towards, people's private businesses, just as a freelance capacity. And then that just eventually snowballed into me kind of owning my own business, with no fucking idea whatsoever that I was doing, right? No business plan. I mean, most people would be like, you've got to have, some kind of mission statement and like a business plan. You got to set out your stall and all of that. But I just kind of figured that like I reckon I knew enough to at least make money and I'd learn the rest on the way. And I mean, maybe that sounds like I'm a bit full of myself, but I've kind of felt like that's what I could do. And man, like I was lucky, I guess, in many ways, but I have been able to do that, not without a lot of stress sometimes, a lot of late nights. But yeah, that kind of brings me to kind of when I met you, and I felt like, okay, well, it's time to take this seriously now. So yeah, that's kind of been the journey. It's a long one. The main thread though is it's all about people, man. It's all about talking to people, and I get energized after every call. I
Yeah.
think, okay, I'll find a way to help you. I could, I hear you. It's kind of being a chameleon and being able to like step inside what someone's talking and thinking, and what is this person really saying? Or what's the subtext here? Spending that time, and I think that's just maybe always been a natural skill, one that I've kind of developed as well over time.
Yeah. I mean, even when we're talking about your journalism background, that was like a big piece that sometimes isn't being highlighted as much. But that piece of like, you are such a hunter for like the gem
Hmm.
of a story, or even
Yeah.
just like helping people. Because I think when people live their stories, they don't find it that important because they're like, whatever, I lived that thing, no big deal, right? And it takes someone sometimes not attached to the life of that person or that experience of that person to be like, wait, that piece is actually pretty important to tell your clients.
Yeah,
It,
for
it,
sure.
it
Yeah,
tells
yeah.
people like what kind of person you are, what you stand
Hmm.
for, because there are a sea of people that do what we do, right? That we are not like the next, I don't know, inventor of the next a thing that's never been
No.
done before. Most services, right? You've got thousands, if not millions, of other people potentially doing the same thing. And so, what is the thing that is different, right? Is likely your stories, likely your
Oh, always.
perspective, and right? Like how your lived
Yeah.
experience have shaped how you see the world, and how does that impact the way you help clients, right? Like that whole
Hmm.
finessing of understanding of that is really hard to pinpoint when you're the one living that life and then having to come out of
For
that
sure.
life and go, hey, let me observe myself. Like it just quite doesn't work that way, right? Like, so like I know
Yeah, no,
story,
and
yeah.
I agree, and I think that the difficult part is not so much telling them like having belief in the fact that their story is interesting. That can be done. Like sometimes it might take a little while, but that can be done. It's telling them that like there's actually people out there who are interested in your story. That's the hard part. That's the belief that they don't have. It's not that they don't think that their own story is interesting. It's that they don't think that other people will find it interesting. Um, and that you don't need a million people to find your story interesting. Likely is you only need like, I don't know, a dozen a year, like that's all. And it wouldn't be weird on this planet to have 10 people who go, hey, that's the person for me, and I share the same values and the same characteristics, and my story is really similar to theirs. And so that's all that you have to do. I say again, all that you have to do, but that's the first step of all that you have to do to realize that like what if you have the skills, then they are important,
Yeah.
and you do have value to be able to tell your story and have people believe you.
Mm. Okay, I want to talk about sort of like that, the first time when a client believes they need help, right? They have like this aching issue about marketing, right? Where they're like, okay,
Mm,
something's not converting, my emails aren't working, my sales page isn't getting enough clients, whatever the reasoning is. I'm sure you've got some common ones, right? The ones on top of my head
mm,
are things like, hey, I'm not getting as many clients as I used to get. Something's not working. I don't even actually know where the hell my clients did come from. But somehow I just
mm.
know the pipeline's
Yeah,
dry, right? Like something's not working.
yeah.
Or it might be that they may have put a Facebook ad out or an ad of some kind out and crickets are happening, right? There's kind of a multitude of reasons why someone might go, okay, I might need some marketing help. And, they might diagnose themselves of what they think is the problem. Like, I need better copy, I need better positioning, I need snazzier branding
Hmm.
or whatever's the thing. But in your experience from working with quite a number of clients over the years, what do you think like is the most common mistake like your clients are observing? Or I shouldn't say mistake, but like kind of the wrong way of looking at or diagnosing their problem. We talked about story, for example, being like a
Hmm.
forefront piece that you work on, but likely people aren't knowing that's the thing. They're like, well, how does story lead to more sales? I don't get it, right? So like
Yeah, yeah.
what do you think they, the people that come to you in the beginning of time, what are they struggling with? What are they trying to like fix? And what do you think is the
Hmm.
mistake in terms of like how they're observing that and not getting to actually the crux of what could make their marketing better?
That's a really good question. I mean, it's kind of multifaceted, but like I mean, again, bring it back to something that people get really like almost yawn worthy about, right? It is the funnel. It's like where there's always a drop off somewhere in some part of that funnel, and it might in the conversations that I'll have with people, and those conversations are part of like a shotgun audit or an audit that I'll do with them. I'll ask pointed questions that specifically try to get me to understand exactly who they are. And then if I can see that there is a clear and obvious distinction between, say, what is on their website is what they're advertising, what's on their social media, why should anyone believe you if I don't? Like that, and that's generally the biggest problem, right? I've got a client at the moment who they're trying to advertise to, Instagram bikini clad wearing people to tell them like how great their product is when their story arc is so much different than that. And it's just like I don't believe you, and it's being really, really upfront with them. I mean, they could potentially get quite pissed off, right? You call into question by accident someone's integrity, and they don't mean to come across this way. It's just that they've been fed what they think their product's supposed to be or their service is supposed to be, and ideally, it's matching those two things together and going, well, that's not what you told me. I've got the documentation, I've got the transcript of all the things that we've talked about. I've got your client form, and none of what you've said to me is what you're saying to them. So, how do you expect me to believe you, or anyone to believe you for that matter? So, a lot of it is kind of picking apart that. That doesn't fix all of their problems. It's not like all of a sudden they change all their copy and just like flies on shit, people start coming through their door, right? That's not going to happen. There's always other issues. They're often on completely the wrong channel or all of them, right? Posting LinkedIn posts, where that platform has just gone to the dogs and everyone is posting about, scenarios that never happened with, copying. Anyway, I can go off on a tangent that they could be using LinkedIn. They could also be using Facebook. They're posting on that. They're spending so much time splitting between all of these different channels, all of these different outreach opportunities, and not selecting just the one where it's most likely based on who they're talking about and what their story arc is that those people probably only actually hang out on one or two. And that might be just starting with getting that organic posting, just start making those changes, those conscious changes. It's like if you change your diet, right? It's not going to be, okay, Monday, that's what's happening. And now I'm a changed man and that's what I'm going to do. It takes time to be able to go through that process and start changing to who you really are. Because it's almost like you're allergic to that because you think that no one cares. So that's the main problem, Lydia. It really is. It's the main problem is believing, yeah, I'm not getting the messaging right and changing that. It often boils down to what you're putting out there to the world and then making sure that's uniform throughout the whole process, throughout the
Yeah.
whole sales process, from the start all the way to the finish, right? If there's ever anything that gives people are looking for a reason to fuck off. Like they're looking for a reason to bail. They're looking for a reason to not purchase, especially for high ticket items. And if you give them one, see you later. Subconsciously they're gone. They're not for me. So that language has to be uniform the whole way through, from the moment you connect with them to the moment that you make that sale. And there's always, almost always, a clear and obvious like glitch. There's
Yeah.
almost always. So
Well,
yeah,
that's why
that's the main one.
I really love that you start with that audit, and that was one of the key things that you and I really like worked on when we worked together, because
Mm,
this is your way. Like, that's your most
yeah.
natural way to show up. And actually, I remember telling you, I was like, don't even hide behind that, don't want to offend people attitude, because actually the people that are probably your best clients are like, no, give it to me, please, because I'm tired of this
Mm,
politeness of people just saying your stuff is great and this is blah blah blah, and no one telling me the truth of, like, as someone coming in for the
yeah.
first time, maybe I'm not quite
Yeah.
getting the gist. I know you're a good person. I know that actually the whole like purpose of why your business exists is amazing, but somehow along the way, whatever happened, it's become this promotey, sort of performative
Mm,
thing. And it's not your
yeah.
fault.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
your fault because, there's a bunch of like, right? I call them sort of like the bros, right? The marketing bros,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Telling
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
these ways to
Seven
do
figure
something.
this.
Yeah. Like, what's the
Yeah.
hook? What's the tripwire? What's the blah, blah, blah. And you got caught up, and not your fault at all.
Mm,
But like, this is kind of the
yeah.
first
Just
impression.
conditioning. Just
Totally, right?
conditioning.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
think that's so helpful, because sometimes when I think people go get help for marketing, they will tell the marketer, right, what they think is wrong, right? I think it's the social media
Hmm.
thing. I'm not posting correctly, I'm not
Mm,
posting enough, my images aren't right, or my funnel email sequence isn't, active enough, or whatever they think it is. And then you fix that thing, right? But I think the more transparent approach that you take is that you're like, well, let's not guess what we
hmm.
think is the problem, right? Like, let me go in there with like the most honest and first impression style brain, where you've actually told me what you're about, and I'm going to see for sure if on the online world that's the perception, that's the impression people are getting. And then the more honest I
Yeah.
can be with you, then we can actually help you show up more like that, right? Like, it's not that you shouldn't be on LinkedIn or you shouldn't be on Instagram, but maybe even how you're showing up on it feels too
Hmm.
performative, feels too salesy, when actually people want to see a face, especially with a high ticket item. Like, who am I paying here? I'm not paying a bot, am I?
Yeah.
Like in today's world with
For
AI, it's
sure.
so hard to know what's written by human versus a bot. So, something like a video, something that's a little bit more off the cuff sometimes, even,
Hmm.
lands better, right? Than just a very polished sort of marketing intro video, right? That looks good, but actually
Hmm.
doesn't quite capture the trust that you need, right?
Hmm.
So the audit piece, I think, is so important. Have someone, hopefully Alex, if you work with someone like him, do that audit that isn't going to tell you bullshit, that doesn't have a reason to tell you bullshit, and be able to get to the source of that. Um, you also
And I
mentioned
wanted to
this.
say as well, Lydia, like quickly, it's like, the irony of it all is that, like, I find it hard. Like, I find it hard too. Actually, our relationship was part of how I mean, it always comes naturally for me to just go, no, that's not going to be it. Like that,
Yeah.
sit there and listen for sure. Take stock of everything in front of you. Like, it takes me a long time to make a decision, which is helpful in the way that I run my business, because I'll listen to what you have to say and then go back and listen to it again, and then all the other things you've had to say, and then there's the evidence, right? But I say that, but the irony of it is like you've got to do it yourself too, right? And I find it hard, which means
That's
like
so
I
true.
feel like sometimes I can be a natural partner to people, because like I can sympathize with how difficult it can be to just be yourself.
Mm,
As you get older, your friend circle gets smaller, and I used to be the guy that used to just stand in a party and like, oh, some kind of jester, and it just isn't me anymore. Like, and so, or maybe it wasn't ever at all, and so like part of that, like, I don't like to use the word authenticity because there's another word that's been co-opted by a bunch of people, but it's finding like it's okay to just be you and do it your way. And I say this from someone who finds it awfully difficult from time to time to just be me. And it takes practice. And how weird is that, it
mm,
takes practice to be yourself, because everyone is trying very hard in business, especially small businesses. They're trying to find the lane that they're in.
hmm.
They're trying ever so hard. And how strange is it that sometimes you find that just by being yourself,
I
that,
know it's like easier
you
said than
know,
done. And even
right?
coming back to like it's an identity question, isn't it? It's like who am I, who am I becoming? That may not be the person I used to be to get somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
and that
Yep.
that is a big question. It's not something that can happen overnight for sure, but it's a very good question to ask, especially when
Mm-hmm.
things feel hard, feel complicated. It's likely because you've not been yourself. Also, there's sometimes a skills
Yeah.
gap in things, right? Of like having to learn something
Of
new or
course.
do something better.
Yeah.
But a lot
Yep.
of it's
Mm-hmm.
also like, I think when after years of working with so many people, a huge um, angst or anxiety around a strategy sometimes is not because it's a hard strategy, but actually it's not a strategy that's right for you, or the way you've approached that
Mm-hmm.
strategy. Maybe someone gave you a blueprint, a step-by-step thing, and said it worked for them and you should do the same thing. Do that tripwire, do that ebook, do that thing or whatever, and it's not in your
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
strengths, right? And that's why you
Yeah.
feel the resistance sometimes in doing that thing. And that's kind of
Yeah.
the next thing I
Yeah.
wanted to kind of dig into, because you used to, with marketers and marketing experts, right? The word funnel, which I know I fucking hate saying, but I understand
Mm-hmm.
what that means as it's important to a business. I like to kind of call it more like all the different dating phases that you have with a client before
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
before you
Yeah.
go
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
steady.
Yeah.
Okay. So I always call
For
it,
sure.
how do you have multiple dates with a client and get to know
Mm-hmm.
them, make sure they're the right person for you as well, because obviously one of the worst things that can happen to a business owner is working with someone they do not like, just for the money.
Yep.
So like you do
Done
need to go
that.
through, right? Yeah, totally. And you do need to go through certain phases of that, that recognition and that understanding,
Mm-hmm.
and making sure you're both on the same page about the approach of how you want to take, if you were going to work together. That isn't just a one email thing. It's not a one social
Mm-hmm.
media post that creates that kind of trust. And so
Yep.
in order for clients to go steady with you, there's sort of multiple touch points, which perhaps, right, we know that as a funnel. We might
Mm-hmm.
call it a client journey. I call it the dating
Mm-hmm.
phases of client going steady with us.
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
I want to talk about that for a minute, because this can get so complicated, from the
Uh-huh.
thing that people tell you to do, from like this intro offer and tripwire you have to give for under $20, to then like a landing page for this welcome video, to an 18-part email sequence, to then
Mm-hmm.
all these different hoops that people have to jump through just to get a hold of you. I myself, I mean, I'm not saying I have all the answers, but just again, just going from my own experience, I have really learned that, like, over the last 12 years of running a business, when I have adopted that more like, technical parts of a funnel, I've
Mm-hmm.
lost touch with my own voice, because of just like how much people have, and all the things have to be automated in order to like make this thing
Mm-hmm.
work. And also I just
Mm-hmm.
became like a full-time marketer versus being a coach, right? Which is what I'm supposed to be paid to do, right?
Yep.
And then what I discovered too is that, like, for a business that is like mine, which offers high ticket premium experience products, right, from retreats to coaching programs, etc., like, my
Mm-hmm.
people do not want to jump through hoops to like
No.
get to me or get to know me, right? They don't need to be
Mm-hmm.
like convinced. I don't even want to convince them in that way. So like, I'm wondering from your point of view, because I believe there is kind of a different approach to funnels for a $15,
Mm-hmm.
$20 product, but a
Mm-hmm. Oh,
$5,000
those.
coaching program, right? It may have completely different essence, right? It's different steps that makes this quote unquote funnel feel authentic,
Mm-hmm.
trustworthy, credible, etc. What are some of your tips or advice around, like, if you were someone selling a premium product, someone selling high ticket items or services, how would you define a funnel? And what are some key things that you think are non-negotiable in that funnel to build that trust that you mentioned?
Yeah, okay, that's huge. Big question. Well, I don't really have the nomenclature you do with the dating. I still call it a funnel. I'm still working out how to not call it a funnel, but still make it a funnel.
Yeah.
Yeah, but because it does sound boring, and it is one of those kind of eye-rolly things where people go, "Oh God, consideration phase, interest." I say, whatever, right? But the truth is that the first thing I would say is that you've got to be able to understand the behavior of people who are coming into your ecosphere, like ideally. We've talked a lot about kind of the unmeasurables, of what's important from being yourself and being authentic. But in terms of the things that are measurable, and this is where kind of the technical side that I lean into a lot, is that you do need to understand the behavior of what people are doing when they come to your website, or what they're doing if they're clicking on your ads, or whether they are at all. You do have to have a method of being able to measure essentially what people are doing, and that requires setting up a few things like Google Tag Manager, and then and even I say it can be a little bit complex. It can bother people, but I think for some reason or another, I don't know, the marketing world has made a lot of these things feel way more technical than they actually are. And ideally, all you need is to be able to have a dashboard to show people, to show yourself. People are coming into my ecosphere, they're coming into my environment. They're doing this, this, and this in my environment. They're looking at these blogs, they're watching these videos, they're not looking at these pages. They're clicking on the CTA, but then they're fucking off somewhere else, right? Or they're leaving entirely, whatever it is. All of these things can be measured, and not that hard to do. And when you're empowered with that information, you can make decisions about your business that are a lot clearer. For example, you've got a bunch of pages that you've created, these blogs, and you're like so excited, and it's taken you such a long time, and no one goes and visits them. Well, I've got news for you, buddy. You don't write any more of those blogs, right? Like that. That is all there is to it. And
Yeah, it stops you from
I'm not sure.
wasting time, like double
Yeah,
downing on
right.
something that isn't actually creating a return.
Yeah. And so by doing so, you can, very early on in an engagement, I'll ask them to set up their analytics if they haven't already, or to see it. And, in the initial audit phase, I just am going deep into what that's happening. But that month as well is also telling that month that I'm with them, it's telling me what kind of page is doing, and then what they're doing. What's being most clicked on? Well, what are people doing after they book? What likely acquisition channel that people are coming from works the best? And then I can present to them like, here's where you're wasting money, and I've got a fair idea of, um, how much revenue that they're making, and I've got a fair idea of how much they're spending on trying to get those clients. And so I can tell them pretty quickly where they're going to be bleeding money, because at the end of the day, it's about having, an ROI that feels comfortable, and like you're doing the work that isn't draining, and you're not putting just yourself into it, but money out of your own pocket, ideally. Um, and so like there is that part of it. And I've got this thing called I call the kind of the golden triangle. I don't know if I should trademark it. Maybe it exists already. I don't know. But essentially it's like your intuition is really important. If you feel like something's wrong, like if you feel like, no, this isn't working, or I would like to try this, like trust it. It's really powerful. It's probably right, but maybe not, right? And then you take data, you put data as the next point of that triangle, and you look at data, and then you say, okay, well, the data backs up my intuition, or it doesn't, right? And then if it does, then you've got 2 points of the triangle. And then the last one is whatever your clients are saying, or existing clients, right? Or whatever you've done to validate what you have to sell, right? And if all of these things match up in one direction, you have your answer, right? It's unequivocal at that stage to me. There might be a few other factors, right, that are super important, but not really. That's a pretty good way to make a decision. And then you can go, okay, we'll throw that in the bin, throw that in the bin. I'm going to keep that. And then your funnel gets smaller and smaller and smaller until you only have one or two channels. You only have one way to book. You've only got a Calendly link, maybe, or a form, ideally one. You've only got, a certain specific number of blog topics that you want to get keywords from. You've only got videos to make for YouTube. Whatever it is that you're doing well will be clearly identified by your intuition, by your data, and by what people are telling you. And then you just do that all the way, and everything else you just kick it out the window, because it's just doing you a disservice to spend too much time on it. Because your time is your money, but also no one gives a shit, mate. Like no one cares. They clearly don't. Your clients don't. You knew it was wrong, and your data says it's wrong too. And so by kind of setting up the process for them to be able to clearly see their data,
Yeah.
that helps them back up their thoughts, their intuition about why it was wrong. And if they haven't already, I really encourage them to speak to the clients. But if they have and they've got testimonials, then we just I will just coagulate all of that information together and then clearly present to them a strategy going forward that they can take with them and do themselves. You know, or there is an option to work with me afterwards for a short period of time. I find it way more empowering to for myself and for them to give clients the tools they need to succeed than for me to be on retainer for the rest of my life. I don't want to. I love nuance, and I don't think people want to pay people that long. So, did I answer your question? I feel like I
Yeah.
answered your question, right?
No, that's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. I mean, that's the idea of a funnel to me. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I like the what you said about that data is part of the golden triangle, because I think a lot of people, especially like people like me who are coaches who are, feely people, right? We're just
Mm-mm.
like, we feel
Yeah,
good
yeah.
about this. This feels good to
Yeah, vibes.
me about, and it's
Vibes,
good. Like
baby.
vibes is good. Like vibes is
Intuition.
not, is
That's the
certainly
intuition.
one of the ingredients of like
Yeah,
feeling
yeah, yeah.
good, right? Feeling good when I do a
Hmm.
marketing thing or do a business thing.
Yep.
But as you say, it's got to be married with data where like if, because we're not just creating a hobby here, right? It's a business that should be
Mm-hmm.
making money, and time is money, right? And that's something I've had to learn too, because I do love to produce. I do love to talk and
Yeah,
share and do all the things. But also it's like, I want to make sure that it's kind of a win-win situation where I'm getting something out of it too, and not just giving free stuff
for
constantly.
sure.
And that could also be potentially like shooting myself in the foot, right? Of being too valuable for free.
Yeah, yeah.
Just because
And
some,
but it's not like it's not like you can't add something new into that either. It's not like you
yeah,
can't go, hey, let's try something else. Or, but Alex, I really like doing it. And it's like, oh, yeah, all right, like that's cool. And sometimes there is a little bit of pushback. It's like, oh, but I really enjoy doing that. And it's like, awesome. But, when you're making this much more money, or, you're spending so much less time not getting leads, you're not going to argue after that. It does take sometimes a lot of cajoling. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes clients are like, holy crap, like I didn't realize that was so bad. And then other
yeah, they're
time
relieved.
people are like, but I really want to do them. And it's like, well, do you really want to do that, or do you really want to make more money? And then, once they'll give it a shot. And once they do, and they do, I don't ever hear that comment again.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, you could say as much as you want about happiness by money buying your happiness, but like having that disposable income, having like a revenue source that is recurring, um, is far more powerful than, your love for writing a blog that no one what reads.
Mm,
It doesn't mean that you can't also go, oh, Alex, I want to try this thing. I'll go, sweet as, let's try it. And then, give it a month, give it 2 months, give it 2 months. Tell me how it went. Look at your data. I don't mind you sending me a WhatsApp saying, oh, it did this. It did this. I was okay. We'll keep doing it then. There's your answer. You found that you had the data. Your intuition was right. People liked it.
mm,
Put it in the mix. If it's
yeah.
not doing that, then you need to not do it anymore.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think that
and
that assessment is so important, because like people can, I'm that person too, where, there's that sort of notion of like, there's a sunk cost bias, right? When you spend a lot of time
mm,
on, developing a podcast show or a YouTube channel or a blog, right? Or a Substack
mm,
or whatever's the new thing you've started doing for the last 6 months. But so there's sort of like this, like, man, I've already spent all this time on it. I can't give up on it,
mm,
right? But actually, if it's
right,
not
yeah,
serving you, right, as a person that needs to be paid, or giving you the clients you actually
yeah,
love working with, right? Then it's not
mm,
actually fulfilling the job, right? And that you can choose to do that for fun, for sure, but it's certainly
yeah, sure,
not
yeah,
an activity that's going to actually be good for the health of the business, right? There's a
yeah. I'm not
separation.
saying get
I
rid of your
do
hobbies.
totally,
Don't get rid of your
totally,
hobbies. Like,
exactly, but
if
know
you
the
love to
reason.
write, yeah, yeah.
Keep going.
If your goal is to come to me and say, hey, I'm doing all these things and I don't know what's going wrong, then my response is likely going to be, well, these are the things that you need to get rid of. If I'm not saying don't to keep writing, write in your journal. If you want to post on Facebook on another account, do whatever you like, right? But if this is a pure business activity, is this something that you are doing with the expectation that you are going to get leads and ideally conversions from, then let's run it through the golden triangle, right? Let's
Yeah,
prove
love
your
that.
intuition incorrect or correct, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Okay, now talking about doing the things that are actually working, but sometimes wasn't as part of the plan. Right. One of the things when I did
Yeah.
my own little audit of like, when I was like, man, I really don't want to do these complicated funnels. And also partly it's not fun. I don't feel good about it. None of I wouldn't even buy, right? Like, so you're
Mm,
usually the first impression test, right? If you yourself feel a
mm,
little icky, a little, oh, likely you don't want your clients to experience that, right? Even if some snazzy marketer did that for you, it may not be the
mm,
right thing for you, right? So one of the things that I notice for me, for example, in terms of funnel or what I call the dating journey of clients, what has
mm,
interestingly worked the best for me is actually certain touch points that are not automated, right? So like certain things that they need to know about my philosophy, my approach. Like I don't have to regurgitate and repeat that all the
mm,
time for every
mm,
single new subscriber, right? I do have a great welcome sequence, for example, that tells people a lot about my approach, and you get that pretty quickly in the first week of belonging to my
mm,
newsletter, for example. But if someone takes a second step, right, of inquiring or even going, hey, I really loved reading that email, or whatever that you wrote, instead of again
mm,
putting them through another automated thing, right, I usually quite manually shoot new subscribers, new potential clients, or whoever's contacting me via my newsletter, which is one of my biggest, right, sort of pillars of content. I just shoot them a
mm,
quick, like 60-second, 90-second video on Loom and actually genuinely ask them about what's going on in their world. And then they
mm,
respond back, sometimes by Loom, sometimes by email. And we just have a good old fashioned conversation, which I know isn't sexy,
mm,
in terms of
mm,
like, oh, wow, this is a snazzy trick. It's not, right? It's genuinely
mm,
just a conversation. But those are literally my highest conversion. I don't like saying the word conversion, but what I mean by that is the
mm,
biggest engagement or connection to getting to know each other. So therefore, if there was a need I can meet for them as a coach, it's
mm,
a genuinely easier conversation to go, hey, do you want to jump on a call and talk about whether coaching's right for you, right? It doesn't feel as
yep.
salesy, it doesn't feel as, because we already had a warmed up conversation. I already know more about what they are. So before I even
Mm,
send them my Calendly link, I kind of need to know we're a good fit or not so that we don't waste each other's time. And so that
for
is
sure.
like a non-automated marketing activity that doesn't feel like marketing for me and very much in tune with the way that I like to get to know people in general, right? I'm not a typer,
Mm,
I'm not a writer. I'm very much verbal and speaking, right? So this works really well for my sort of marketing ritual, right? If you will, to
yep. Yep.
gain more warm clients. I'm wondering, for you, what would be some of your like insights or advice around like when people are struggling to understand like I do want to scale my time with marketing, right? What
Mm,
areas of my quote unquote funnel should I be automating versus creating more personalization or intimacy or like the ways I do my looms, for example? Like, how do I choose when to be more
mm.
intimate, when to be more manual in how I connect with a client? And then what are those things worth automating that maybe is more in the beginning of the funnel? I don't know, right? What are your sort of thoughts around that?
Yeah. It might be a little bit controversial, perhaps, to your audience, Lydia, but the top of the funnel, most of it should be automated to the extent that you are putting as much of your voice in there as humanly possible, right? But with as little actual time, daily time spent on it, right? So, for example, one of the ways I get clients right is I have two Reddit channels, right? Like accounts, and one both under my name, both my business name. I don't pitch on there ever. I hate pitching anyway, so that works. Um, but I have a Reddit agent that I run through Claude, which sounds snazzy, and like again, people think, oh, so difficult. I know a lot of coaches kind of think, oh, that I don't know if I can do that. You can, it's not hard. And you can run it and it can deliver to your inbox like conversations that you yourself would love to have with anyone over a coffee. And all you need to be able to do is provide them value, right? Like, I know your marketing problem is XYZ, and I'll solve it for you right here in this passage. And my specific Reddit agent is able to deliver that to me, give me a kind of a stock template response so that I go in there and takes me about 3 or 4 minutes to change all the stupid M dashes and whatever else that AI has just slop has decided to put in there to make it, and then I can do that 10 posts and that takes me 20 minutes. So I've essentially reached out to 10 potential leads. And I reckon I mean, it's taken a long time. It's not like leads are rushing through the window or anything, but I get a fair amount of people asking me, in a private message, can you tell me more about this? And because in my bio I have my shotgun audit in there and whatever else, I find that to be a pretty good channel. I think generally speaking, you need to, if you're running ads, right, that obviously can be automated. That needs to be something that you've decided what is the plan what is the plan going to be for this ad campaign, what kind of budget I've got, and then whatever in your funnel from there to the time that people are going to have that high touch moment that you're talking about. Let's assume it's an ad. They've clicked a link. They've come through the system. They want to know more. You want to automate almost every part of that, ideally with things like testimonials and ways for them to ensure that the decision-making process is sound and that they feel like they're talking to a person. So it's like human automation almost, until they do what you described, until they reach out into one of those, hey, I want to know more about this. And then I immediately switch and do exactly the same thing. Nothing gets automated after that. I offer people 40, I'll say, hey man, I got a 45-minute shotgun audit that I do for free. We have a chat and you can tell me all of your woes, right? For 45 minutes. If you tell me whatever you want for 20 minutes, you show me whatever you want for that amount of time. And then I'll just give you a no holds barred piece of marketing advice that might make you go, huh, okay. And you can just do whatever you want with that, obviously implied is the opportunity to work with me on a bigger scale, but many don't. But it just builds gravitas. And I think people, if you want quick wins, if that's your method of attack, especially as service businesses, especially coaches, I think you're in the wrong game. I think you've got to be able to understand that some parts get automated and some parts need to be high touch, and there is going to be a lead time from the start to finish. I think the time that it took me to hire you, Lydia, was probably 3.5 months. Who knows what it actually is, right? For any person. Who knows who's
Yeah,
seen me, and then by the time they've decided to work with me, that's what happened. I mean, I
totally.
don't think any of them have been less than a week. More,
Yeah.
what did I say? Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that's why
yeah.
it's so
No,
important to have like a ritual of like continuing to show up for sharing stuff in your business, whether
yep.
or not clients are coming through the door or not. Because you don't, that's the one thing we can never control is when someone
Hmm.
converts. There's so many life situations, budget, life
Yeah,
crises,
yeah.
timing. Like we don't need to, and this is what I always hated about working with other digital marketing strategists is they're like, no, we want to convert within X amount of days as if there's some blueprint for how people make
Oh, yeah,
decisions.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
they force you to do really unethical things in my opinion, right, that tricks
Hmm.
people. So the reason why they buy then is like, oh, because you offered a bonus, or there's a ticking time of like 5 days until the price goes up, and you do all
Yeah,
this
yeah.
manipulation
Launch,
bullshit.
launch
Yeah,
time.
in
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
order,
yeah.
like I hate that goddamn timer on an email when someone sent it to me. It's like I don't need to be
Yeah,
pressured.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
also
It's like a
like it's
doomsday clock.
totally doomsday talk, exactly. And then
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah,
you never feel good about that kind of client that bought because of that doomsday clock
yeah.
anyway, because they're
No,
desperate. They're
no, of
buying because it was
course.
cheaper, or they're buying because they got a deal, not because they're ready. They're not ready for the work,
Yeah,
and that's so different, right? From a ready and right client, that's going to be like, let's go because I'm as committed to this as you are, if not more,
yeah.
right?
I
So
will
yeah,
say for coaches, a lot of your audience are people who, mentors, industry businesses, whatever you like, other life coaches, kind of people that might be interested in your service as well, that might need marketing help from someone like me. Is that it sounds like when I say automate, like that I'm a massive like believer in like AIing the shit out of your process. I'm not like at all. In fact, if you went on my LinkedIn, you'd probably see a crazy person talking about how AI is like destroying our ability to communicate with each other.
mm,
I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying that there's a way to meld both of them together to add fluidity to your process, but not to
yes,
disconnect the human nature of what it is that you do. Um, and I don't know what the balance. I don't know where the middle of the seesaw lies in that. I'm not going to be, professorial and tell you all, my thoughts on it. But I know that if you try to do things purely at volume, you will lose. And if you try to do purely things with high touch everywhere, you'll probably lose. So, it's finding that balance and making those choices about okay, this is a part where I really need to show me and the people who believe in me here. Okay, so that's a decision-making point. And you can do that with data, right? You can say, okay, this is the point where people are dropping off. Okay, I'm going to put a video of a testimonial right in that box. Done. Okay, and now watch that page change. You can
Mhm.
make it in your emails, like your open rates are crap, for whatever reason. Maybe your subject lines are shitty. You can do some A/B testing. You look at your data, that will tell you that. Um, maybe you want to do things completely differently one day. Maybe you want to write in a completely different way. Maybe you just want to say, fuck it one day. This is pissing me off. Go for it. See what happens. Like test it all out. Add enough you to the process that makes it feel like you.
Yeah,
But
I think that's such an
automate
important
automate
piece.
away all the things that you aren't good at. Don't stick in your zone of genius as much as you possibly can, right?
Yeah,
If you think I'm not very good at it, get someone else to do it or automate it.
yeah.
That's that.
Or even like I know, like for me, because as I said, writing is always my secondary skill. I can write a pretty good email page, whatever,
Mhm.
but it takes me 5 times longer, right? And sometimes just
Yeah.
that it makes me to become
Yeah.
resistant.
It doesn't mean the sentiment's different.
Yeah. And then
Yeah,
sometimes I'm
yeah,
like,
yeah.
actually, I know how to talk about, like if I was in front of someone, I know exactly what I want to say.
Yeah, yeah,
That
yeah,
is
yeah. Me
why you
too.
should be here. And then
Damn, why can't we do
maybe
that?
I shouldn't have a sales page. Maybe it should just be a video. It could just be a video with a couple lines. And the video is what
Yeah.
does the heavy lifting. And like, so it doesn't have to look, like that. And that is an automated job. I do it once, right? A bunch of
Hmm.
people can see it, but it's still very Lydia, it's still very my voice and all the things
Hmm.
without it being like, okay, click on this button and then you'll be in the thank you page and then in this page. And, that's what I meant by the
Yep.
automation that can get complex
Yeah.
is that you can still
Absolutely. Yeah.
add a flavor of humanness to an automation,
Yep.
right? That feels
Hmm.
warm and invitational. I always say, my strategy for marketing is called the living room strategy. Is the how do I invite people into my cozy living room? It's not a bunch of people.
Hmm.
It is a bit of a right filter that people have to kind of go through in order to be invited because I don't have that much room in my living room because it's premium, right?
Hmm.
I'm not trying to fill an arena, right? If you're filling an arena of the next David Bowie show or something, right? You got to scalp the tickets. You got to put it all
Yep.
out there and you need a ton of bumps on seats, right? But if
Hmm.
you're in a premium coach or a premium service provider, you don't need as many people, but you do need a right and ready client, right? That
Yep.
is in the
Yep.
right type of mindset,
Hmm.
budget, stage of business that will spend on,
Hmm.
right? And those people do not want to jump through hoops to get to a $10,000, offer. They want
No.
intimacy. That's what they were paying for to begin with. So if you put them into a course funnel or a quiz funnel or a blah, 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 that goes on forever and ever and ever, and they don't ever get to talk to you and there's no invitation,
Bye.
that's not what
Yeah,
they
yeah,
were
yeah.
looking for. So that's something I had to learn too, because I was just doing, like in the beginning parts of my own business, doing things blindly just because it was like the way
Mm.
it was done. Like every other
Yep.
coach, every other person had the exact same type of funnel, and
Hmm.
I made myself do that. And then I remember feeling like, this is so not how I would do it. Like, how would I naturally make friends? How do I naturally
Yep.
build community in real life? And how do I implement that kind of flavor into my business so that it can feel good to me, right? Which is so important for
Yeah, I
feeling
agree.
fulfilled
And
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 fun.
as an end cap on it, I think that I know you and I have very similar kind of ethos to this. For me, it's saying, okay, if again, the things that you need to be able to use to like tell you what that data is, right? They're not going to change. Those programs aren't going to change. But that doesn't mean you have to use them in the same way. You can define how you want to create content, and all you have to do is a bit of testing. You can create 2 or 3 different options feasibly and test them out. And I'm a big believer in that. It's like A/B test your life away, right? And if you've come to me and you are tearing your hair out, or you're worried about why leads aren't getting, I'm going to say, let's test stuff, right? To
Yeah.
find the best way to get what, and then we'll use the data and your intuition and whatever feels good, and let's find out what happens because I think there's a reluctance first to jump out from where you are to go somewhere else and to be someone else. But there's a reluctance to learn some of these kind of like small technical skills that for some reason people go, oh, there's a barrier to entry that's way too high there. It's not. There's not. I'm here to tell you. I'm living proof that it's not, right? You can learn these things. You can learn them in a shorter space of time than you think you can, and you can use them to your advantage. It just means that if you're coming to me and saying these are the things, then you've got to be going, okay, I'm going to give it my all for 2 or 3 months and test and change and use data and my intuition and what people say. And that's, ideally how you're going to find the scene to find the people you like and that
Yeah,
like
I
you.
love that. Yeah, exactly. Okay, I want to end this with a
Mm.
little, resource for people to do of like if they've been kind of like fired up from this conversation, they're like, uh-huh, yeah, I do need to kind of look under the hood of certain things and stop
Yeah.
guessing about how I think I'm getting clients or what I need to do to get clients. And they're just a little lost in like, where do I start? Because that is always the thread, right? It's like there's just so many levers I can pull. Like which one do I pull, right? Can you tell people a little bit about your
Mm.
shotgun audit? Because you mentioned it a bit on this video. Where can
Yep.
people see if they can apply for a shotgun audit? Can they pick your brain on something? If they need that
Yep.
support in right giving that really honest, transparent first impression view,
Mhm.
how do they find that, and what do you do in that shotgun audit?
Sure. So they can find me at my website, it's andysandalpsmedia.com. They can book one there and they can find out a little bit more about what it is there. There's like a linked Notion page that'll tell you a lot about that. But essentially, me and you, whoever it is, they will sit down and we'll talk about your life story, the things that make you you. Um, what you've had in marketing or the things that you fucking hate about it. And usually it's mostly you just hate marketing. Like people just can't stand the thought of that they've built this thing, they've created this thing, and why the fuck is that not enough? Like, it should be enough, feels like it should be enough. But sometimes it's not. Sometimes you need a megaphone, and the megaphone is marketing. And whether you like it or not, it could be the difference between you being successful and failing. And so then that shotgun audit, I'll ask you some questions, some pointed questions, and I want you to show me some data. Whether you have analytics up, maybe you have none. Maybe it'll just be a conversation. Um, and at the end of it, I'll give you 2 or 3 things that you can do, like action points you can do after the call. But about 48 hours after the call, I'll give you a summary with a little bit of a loom in it, and then you can take those action points and like run with them. You can make it, that can be a starting point for you to do something great for yourself, and it's free and it's 45 minutes. I mean, and I think it's different than a lot of stuff out there because I think I take the time to listen. And and if it works out that in that call we'll both realize that maybe we like working together, then we can extend that arrangement and do a month audit after that, which is a lot of a deeper, much deeper diagnoses of what is troubling you, with a much longer 90-day roadmap. And then there's another one after that, Lydia, and there's another thing after that. I'm sure your audience can figure it out after that. But essentially, like if you're interested in doing something like the shotgun audit, it's because you've had enough of guessing. And I don't give cookie cutter advice. I don't give the same, oh, have you tried Facebook ads? Like it's not like that at all.
Well, I've done
It's
I've
it's
done
more
a
it's
I've done a shotgun audit myself with Alex. Okay, so I've developed it with him. Plus, I've been on the other side of the seat, and I can tell you that Alex really gives you like it feels like a paid session. So it really is valuable. And whether or not you end up working together with him or not, you are going to walk away with like at least clarity of like things you can't see. You can't see when you're in your own business knee deep in it, and it's nice to have this outside perspective and someone with a marketing brain to look at what is essential, that is not doing all the things, but actually doing what's really going to be essential for your business, your personality type, your way of showing up, which I think is a huge amount of value for sure. Okay, I always sort of end these conversations with one question, which is what does a tiny but mighty business mean to you? And why are those pieces important, or how you define tiny but mighty business, and why is that important for your life and how you are a business owner?
so just for me, yeah, like what it means to me, just me.
Yes.
A tiny but mighty business to me means one where I can take my little girl to school every day, my little 3-year-old to school, that I can do my homework with my older child every afternoon and play football with her on Saturdays. It means that I can make the amount of money for the value that I'm worth. It means I can go on nice holidays with my family. It doesn't mean wealth and nice cars. I couldn't give two fucks about any of that. I want a business that makes me feel proud of myself. And I want one that means that I get excited every day to help people do exactly the same thing. I'm a believer in the tidy mighty business. I believe you should make your marketing small. Um, yeah, that's what it means to me.
I love it. Thanks so much. Honestly, we could have talked for like 2 more hours, but we won't do that. I will
Well, we
definitely
won't this
have
time.
you. We won't this time anyway. I will get you in for a part two because I think there's so much more, even like in terms of like, we touched upon it today about the premium offers and things like that and how marketing feels different. I feel like that is a
Mhm.
question I get a lot from people. So I got to have you back for digging a little deeper into that when we have the time.
We'd love
But
to.
hey, thank you for joining me. I know you're a busy dad, so I appreciate you and I'm proud of all the work you're doing.
Thanks, mate. Love you. Thanks very much.
See ya.